Next, I would like to welcome Quyn Lê. Quyn Lê was born in Vietnam and inexplicably lost her sight at the age of 2. Like many of the thousands that fled her war-torn country in the 1980s, Quyn and her family made a harrowing journey across the Pacific to finally arrive in Canada. Today, she is a professional therapist, living her dream and helping others as well. Quyn.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Oh, great. I'm really honored to be able to be here and speak to you today. And it's such a wonderful group of people. And because I don't see you, it was kind of really great to hear different names that Susan mentioned. So that's really helpful. And I've been allotted to have 10 minutes to speak to you today. So we'll see whether I can do that. And my question is, can you change your life in 10 minutes? Or can you change someone else's life in 10 minutes? And so today I want to share with you a story about how 10 minutes can change a person's life and then many people's lives after that. So I'd like you to imagine this image. It was a very hot day. One day, exactly 30 years ago, 1992. A very hot day on an island in Indonesia where thousands of Vietnamese boat people lived there in the refugee camp. The temperature was 40 degrees Celsius. And it was 12 o'clock when the sun was at the hottest in the day. A mother was walking with her 12-year-old blind daughter. The mother looked very sad, very hopeless, very dejected. The blind daughter could even sense her mother's sadness, so she started to feel hopeless herself. That blind child was me. And so seeing that my mom was sad, a very kind friend invited us into a restaurant to have lunch. So if you could imagine, if you're hungry every day, that would have been a special treat. But my mom was too sad to eat, too hopeless to care. And so she said, no, thank you. And up until that point, my family, my mom, my sister and I, were living in that refugee camp for almost 4 years. Every day, we starved. Every day, we hoped, we waited for a brighter day when we could leave this foreign place, a place away from home, a place where there was no privacy, little dignity, and ongoing starvation. Yet, we risked our lives to come to that refugee camp. When I was a child, we were in prison once because fleeing from Vietnam was illegal. And we had to travel on a small, rickety boat with 100 other people just crowded on a boat and just sit very close together. We were lost in the sea for 10 days. We endured hunger, seasickness, thirst, even pirates' attack. We thought that we were not going to make it. We thought we were going to die. But miraculously, we survived. But yet on this day, we felt more hopeless than ever. Why? Because we were told that our family was not qualified as refugees. That meant that eventually we would have to go back to Vietnam, a place where we tried so hard to escape. And so it seems like all our hopes and dreams would never come true. And so I felt sad, just like my mom. I felt like we were like giving up. And so I started to become sick and quite weak, almost like fainted. And I'm not sure whether because the heat, it was the heat stroke, or whether because I was just too hopeless to want to do anything. But you know what? In that moment, a car was driving towards us. And usually we would ignore these cards because they belong to very important people. But because my mom panicked, so I was sick, she panicked. So, people here who have children would know, right? When your children are sick, you panic. So she waved at the car, and then the car drove on. And so we thought, just hopeless again. But we weren't surprised. And yet, a few minutes later, the car came back and stopped for us. And so excited, I rushed into the car. And as a blind child, I've never seen a car before. I'd never been in a car before. So I rushed in and I bumped my head like this. And so if you imagine, I was sick. I was sort of like in a daze. But my mom whispered something that sort of like jolted me out of my sickness. She said, "It's Peter." Well, right away, I knew who Peter was. You know who he was? He was the head of all the lawyers who represented the United Nations. He was known to be pretty cold, pretty strict, and pretty tough. But they make decisions about who could be refugees and who could be not. And so it was like a light bulb that went off in my head. I thought that was a golden opportunity for me to do something about it. Maybe I could change my life. Maybe I could change my family's life. And as a blind child, 12-year-old, I was quite timid, right? And I was told not to speak to adults without being spoken to. It's kind of ironic that I'm standing here speaking to you. But so I gathered up all my courage, and I decided to speak to him in my broken English. My English wasn't like this now. And so I said to him, I am pointing at my eye, I said, "I am blind. Please help me." And so in that moment, something touched his heart, I think, even though he was known to be quite tough. He didn't say much. He asked, where we were going, and I told him about our sad news, not having refugee status. And the only thing he did was he took down my family's ID number. That's it. That's all he did. So I thought that he would forget about us. But the next day, he called us in and told us he overturned the decision. That meant that we could be official refugees because we were asylum seekers at that time. And that's a miracle that never happened before. So what would happen if my mom accepted the friend's offer to eat? We would have totally missed the car. But how many times in our lives when we would say yes to good things momentarily and miss life-changing opportunities? What happened if my mom didn't wave at that car? Or what happened if I didn't speak up to ask for help? Because of being too sick or too shy or thinking that what's the point? And what happened if he didn't do anything? Because he was in the position of privilege. He was a lawyer. He was Dutch. He was Caucasian. I was just a blind child. I didn't even have an ID number. I only had my family's ID number. I was a blind child. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here speaking to you today. And so many times I wish that I could meet him and thank him for what he did on that faithful day. Because he opened his heart, because he had compassion for me and my family, we were able to come to Canada shortly after that. And then a year after that, my dad could join our family. A few years after that, my younger sister was born here in Canada. Several years after that, my nieces and nephew were born here in Canada. So you could see, he changed my life, my family's life, and family's generations to come. And as a therapist, I've worked with thousands of people for the last 12 years or so. I would like to think that I've changed many people's lives. My clients often tell me things like, Quyn, you are my lifesaver. Or Quyn, you have saved my son's life, my daughter's life, my mom's life. So, have you not been present in your life? Have you been sleeping away in your life and not noticing wonderful people around you, wonderful opportunities around you? Or have there been times when you felt too sick, too hopeless, thinking that what's the point, right? Well, the point is you. The point is your life. The change begins with you, with you. And so wake up to your own courage. Be present and notice people around you. Do something in your life. Perhaps one of the stories or all of the stories can change your life today in 10 minutes, however, how many minutes you need. They say that when we liberate ourselves, we liberate other people. Or you could be the loyal character in another person's life. You know, the fact that we live here in Canada puts us in the position of privilege, right? So give out your hand to hold someone else's hand or to lift them out of their dark pit. Or open your heart to empower others from a place of love and compassion. So you too can change your life in 10 minutes. You too can change someone else's life, many people's lives in 10 minutes. So thank you so much for listening to my story.
It really, this idea of the moment, and here we are in a moment, and the rippling effect of all of this, and the resonating power of sharing a story, and for us to witness such storytelling as well. It's powerful, and it sends waves out. So it's exactly what we celebrate. We celebrate your journey, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Thank you.